There is a generic decision model that we need to take into account. It provides a checklist of how decisions are made, and if you follow this list, you probably get to the best possible outcome. First on the list, define the problem. Specifically, what are we trying to get done? How does it fit into the goals of the organization? And what are the elements of the problem? What's the timing? Define the desired outcome. Not just in generic terms, but in specific. How do you operationalize and monetize the outcome? How are you going to measure if the outcome is done, if it's done satisfactorily? Develop an hypothesis or a pre-decision or a thinking process of getting to your decision, and see if that makes sense. And I always think of, how do you use the outcome of a decision? Generate alternatives, because you might find that there is a better, cheaper, more effective, faster, more efficient way to do something than your original traditional approach. Look at the options. Which one is best in terms of expenditure, in terms of time, in terms of resources, in terms of the abilities of the people who are being involved in it. Make a decision. This is where leadership comes in. Make a decision, stick by that decision, get something done. Implement the alternative as fast as possible, looking for ways to tweak or improve along the way, but not to materially change it. Then see what happens. What's the follow-up? How do you measure it? What's the feedback? And do you need to repeat the process? So that's our generic decision model. Within every decision, in every organization, I suggest that there need to be ethical considerations in the decisions that you make. And these are driven in part by the climate in the organization. Is it a bottom line mentality where only financial results count? That sometimes generates less than ethical considerations, and we've seen a lot of that in the last 3 or 4 years, certainly, but even before that, in the previous 15 or 20 years, there have been some very bad decisions and unethical activities based on the overwhelming desire to make money in organizations. Is there an exploitative mentality at work? In other words, are people in the organization deciding that they have to take advantage of somebody? Are they taking advantage of a competitor? Are they taking advantage of a supplier just because they can? Is there a Madison Avenue mentality at work here, where promotion is what counts, not value, and it's not important that the product is successful or long-lasting? It's important that it be sold and that it be promoted and that the organization be known for its brand. All interesting ethical considerations. Stonewalling, another ethical point. If you find that people will not do work, will not give you information, that's a bad sign within an organization. Something may be happening that you need to investigate. You can look at counter norms. In other words, a counter norm is something which is counter to the general good operating procedure of a company or its historic values. B.F. Goodrich, for a long time, denied that its tires were causing wrecks on Ford products. They said it had to be something wrong with the car. Well, it turned out that it was wrong with the tires. B.F. Goodrich had a long history of producing good products and owning up to its own failures, but in this instance, it had an ethical lapse. Enron, we talked about, where a number of people convinced themselves that the only thing important was growth. They created companies that had no revenue, only paper, and then they booked revenue from from those companies to the larger company, so that there was a house of cards built. A bad organization, and it got even worse as the company began to fail, and it abused its employees and its vendors. More recently, we've seen the Madoff example and others who have just operated in an unethical way because they were driven, whether by pride or by the desire to make money, to act unethically and ultimately illegally. Let me talk about biases in individual decisions, how we make decisions that affect our way of operating, our way of living within organizations. We talk about heuristics. Heuristics are sometimes called rules of thumb or simplified ways of thinking about a situation. And they sometimes can be valuable and sometimes can be oversimplifying. When somebody says, what's the bottom line, they're asking for the heuristic of what's the final impact. But it may not be as simple as a single number or a profit outcome. There has to be some examination of what happened to get there. There can be metaphors for models of what we're doing. In other words, we're kicking the can down the road. Interesting and common, but it's not so simple. Does it mean that something is not getting decided right now? That isn't part of kicking the can down the road. That's a part of abrogating responsibility. Are things available to get done at the present? It's easy enough to say, let's get after it, but if all of the parts are not in place to make something happen, it's not responsible.